the original work of the autobiographical novel 10 Years of Marriage by Su Qing, a female writer in the Republic of China. Chapter 19. Lonely life. Ling has been sick for weeks. The doctor confirmed it was typhoid fever. In addition to taking antipyretic and cardiotonic medicine every day, vitamin C, glucose and calf liver injections are also needed. At that time, the source of Western medicine was not smooth. I almost used up all my savings for Herxian. Z has never come to visit him. Have you forgotten him? Still afraid that I will ask him for money. Finally, when Mother Wang went back to get her own things, the old mother told her that Miss Chunyu knew that Ling had picked me up. I cried and argued with him several times. Said to be a divorced woman still have to come to my door. He also said that if Ling wanted to die, she would have to die in her own home. Forced Yao Shan to take him back. Xian finally didn't do what he did. But I promise never to come. Siush will no longer let us, mother and daughter, come to his door. Let me think about it. Who would be happy to come to your door? Just give Yuan to me. Agalini will never pay attention to you again. Speaking of Yuan, Ma told him again after I carried Ling that day. He just burst into tears. From now on, every time I see a tricycle entering the alley, I have to shout nervous, Limum and sister are back. Me old mother told him that it was not the case. Only then did he become disappointed and stop talking. They recently added a Gao Ma to their family. Miss Chunyu found it herself not the same as old mother, often making trouble in front of that woman. The old mother said to Wang Mei if it weren't for the round face, she doesn't want to stay there anymore. Now Yuan is very scared when she sees Gao. Every time I say a word to my old mother, always take care of me. Don't let Gao Ma hear it. That day when Wang Ma went to get something, Yuan pulled her clothes corner and said, Wang Ma, are you back? Very nice. Every Nasigo Ma can get out of here. Wang Ma shouldn't have told him direct. Linosh will come back to serve Ling. Guan Yuan started to cry after hearing this. Mother, doesn't mom come here anymore? She hugged her sister. Don't you want me anymore? The old mother coaxed her and said, please be silent. Gao Ma heard it. I'm going to start a fight. Agan Yuan just needs to learn well and grow up. Once you become an official, you can go to your mother. He didn't dare to speak anymore. What a poor child. But I am taking care of Ling with all my heart. Feed porridge, soup and orange water. Recorded urinary and defecation status night and day. I worked so hard that I lost weight. It's hard to hope that she will recover. Wang Ma refuses to go back. Just stay at our house. One day I told her that I wanted to see Yuan secretly. She said Mr. Song and No 3 opposite was quite kind. We can meet at his house. I obey her. So I went to Mr. Song's house and explained my purpose. Mrs. Song sympathizes with my asked the maid to find Yuan for me. I think Miss Chunyu will know about it when he comes. It caused disharmony among their neighbors. It's better to just look through the window by yourself. At that time, Miss Chunyu's parents, brothers and sisters simply moved to Xin's house. Everyone regards Yuan as a thorn in their side. The old mother is not allowed to play with him. He said that such a big child still needs to be led by someone else. Let him run in and out of the alley. Alane spent a long time looking at the window of the Song family. Saw Yuan coming out with a small wooden stool. Shabby clothes, wearing only a pair of wooden slippers on my feet. He raised my hand to wave to him outside the window. He didn't notice at first. He had no choice but to call out Yuan. He looked up and smiled, quickly dropped the wooden stool and ran to Song's house. I even fell down when I entered the door. The wooden mop was thrown 3 feet away. Song family's maid picked it up for him. Dressedy took him to a nearby snack bar. While eating snacks, Yuan looks down from the window, saw a mechanical bicycle passing by. He pointed and said, Mother, Yuan has grown. Yuppie asked my dad to buy a mechanical bicycle. Jadu sits down to look for his mother. It sounds very sad to send him home after eating. On the way, he wants to buy noodles and a small ganji. I'm afraid what to give him. Miss Chunyu saw it. It's inconvenient to ask. So I didn't agree to him delivered to the alley in trance. I told him to hurry up and run in by himself. He refused to move next to my repeatedly coaxed and pushed him to leave quickly. He really turned around every step of the way until I went crying with a sad face. When his shadow disappears, he couldn't help but shed tears. Wipe dry with a handkerchief for a long time, then go to the Song family to say goodbye and thank Yumer. Song and his wife were also very sad about it. Later, Miss Chunyu finally found out about this matter. The old mother was reprimanded. Very mixed, said she couldn't keep Yuan in good hands. The old mother said back that you have never taken care of such a big child. Don't you need constant supervision? They hated her even more. Don't dare to peek at Yuan anymore. The three of us lived quietly in Dali's apartment, looking forward to Zhao Ruiguo's sudden arrival, but he never came. Apartment rents have increased again. Cash on hand is getting less and less. So I discussed it with Wang Mai. Want to knock out the room here, still living on Lanzian Road because the transportation is convenient there and the rent is low. Ender is here. Agan couldn't stand it for a while. I had no choice but to report to Zhaoling. And because I'm afraid of the inconvenience of showing off, so it was published in an English newspaper. One day a woman dressed in rich clothes came. First thing she asked me when she saw me was, if you live here, do you need a note? I was just baffled after hearing this. Ask her what she said. Nothathan. She explained it to me in detail. She said she was staying in a room at the Dali Hotel below our building. The police often ask for tea when they become saltwater girls. They also need to take notes. I seem to have been greatly insulted, but I have no choice but not to care about it all. Her. This is an apartment. The room is private, different from public places such as hotels. Only then did she understand he really want to bargain. It was decided that the top fee would be $2,000. She told me again how well that foreign friend treated Harry. Also need to buy various furnishings for her. I felt very sad after hearing this. A woman with advanced knowledge is building a house for money. Another low-class saltwater girl put the money in without caring, left this quiet room. Three of us returned to Lanzian Road. I put $1,000 in a safe deposit box. The other $1,000 will be used for household expenses. One after Anathari rarely go out on weekdays. No one came to see us. Lunar New Year is here. Come in, Miss Wan Shan. She is my cousin-in-law, also my old classmate. Now, work as a clerk in a bank, live in the female dormitory of the bank. We talked about the uncertain future. She said everything was empty. Advise you to save money and save money. Send some money back to live in the country city. I said I was homeless. The husband's family has been cut off. Me mother-in-law has no words to go back again. She sighed. It's not your fault. It is a helpless thing to meet someone who is not kind to you. At least I always understand you. If you don't mind it, come and let's get together. I said I would never go back to Insidish. Suddenly sighed for a long time and said, I didn't think so before. But people get older year by year. The tree is thousands of feet tall. Fallen leaves return to their roots. Now I really hope that I can return to Incheng as soon as possible to live at home. I say live a domestic life. That's it. Smiled. Of course. There is nothing special. Watering vegetables and collecting rent. Just serve your mother-in-law until 100 years later. She is also very pitiful. If this happens, I will die. You can also give an explanation to your brother. It sounds miserable to me. Just say that even if a person dies, he must die comfortably. She corrected that it was not comfortable to die. It's deathly quiet. I think a woman has gray hair. I have to take the tram to the office every day. How distressing. I just want to sit at home peacefully and eat a bitter meal. It's a pity that the currency value is too unstable. Work hard to save some money. In a few months it won't be a big deal. I shook my head and said, suck a lifeless day. Can't make Edu. Have to find someone to marry anyway. She quickly waved her hand to stop. Dao King Mai. Don't think so. You already have children. It's better to try to raise them properly. Grew up and got married. I'll give you a grandson earlier. I said I never thought about having any grandchildren. That's because you are still young. She said when you were a girl you would never think of needing children, but later he was raised. You are willing to sacrifice everything for them. You will be old in the future. You must also love your little grandson the most well. How fun little girls are. I hate myself for not having children. Plan to raise some money in the future and go to the nursery to get one. This is ancient Shinan science women's thoughts. Never thought Sister Wangxia would become so stale. I'm afraid that the shadow of aging seems to be rushing towards my eyes. I will never get love. Can't you get the light? Alas, she married such an unsatisfactory man and wasted 10 years of precious time. How will the relationship continue in the future? Is it really as miserable as Sister Wangxia expected? Here I think of her separation and reunion with my cousin. They were introduced by a friend and got married soon. When my cousin was sick, he lived in his wife's house. Sister Wangxia took good care of him and had to deal with her mother and brother and sister-in-law. Later, my cousin's illness became more and more serious. They agreed that they must hold each other's hands and die. One night, my cousin fainted several times. It seemed that he was dying. He held his hand tightly. He still forced himself to mutter, to comfort him that it was okay. He didn't know if he listened. His tongue had been hard for a long time, and he couldn't speak. In the morning of the next day, he seemed to be slightly more conscious. She gently retracted his tightly held hand because she couldn't hold her bowel movement. When she finished her bowel movement and was about to go upstairs to visit my cousin again, the mother then asked her about what happened last night. She told him, with tears in her eyes, that she had held her hand tightly all night. She also said that she seemed to be a little more awake in the morning. His mother cried out, "Oh, maybe it was a last breath." She became anxious after hearing this. She rushed upstairs. When she got to the bed, she saw that my cousin was already dead. So, she cried bitterly. She thought that her only regret was that she should not have gone downstairs to defecate. From then on, she had been keeping her chastity for him with all kinds of hardships until now. Whenever she mentioned him, she couldn't help crying like rain. This made me jealous and envious. She always had such a person in her heart. He would always belong to her. Although he finally didn't hold her hand tightly when he was dying, his heart would always remember her. It would never change. If my cousin was still alive, he might have already found a concubine. I often maliciously speculated to comfort myself. There was only emptiness in my heart, an indescribable emptiness. The only comfort was lingering. Life is like this. Hardships seemed to be digging my way along a rugged road. In the dark and terrifying night, I had no companions. I only held Lingling. Although I was still the one who took care of her, I became a little bolder. I also tried to print some books. However, the sales were greatly reduced. It was said that my works were soft, but people's hearts were inclined to praise and glorify. One day, I went to Wenmai Road to collect book bills. I met Lu Ji, a former employee of Dejiang newspaper. When Dejiang newspaper was dissolved, he received a large amount of money. He returned to his hometown to divorce his bound-foot wife. His bound-foot wife cried and begged, saying that she could not make a living. He sneered and said to others, "Look, Miss Su, the famous female writer in Shanghai, is not a divorced woman. How can she make money by writing articles? Poor, his bound-foot wife has never been able to read. It is certainly not easy to learn to write articles. As a result, she had to work as a maid to take care of children." But he returned to Shanghai without any emotion. He actually married a woman who had studied in high school for half a year. Female student was very proud. He introduced his new wife to everyone he met later. The money from the separation was gradually used up. He then started working for the newly established Chinese culture company that had moved from the mainland. Their company recently published a picture album. It sold very well that day. He also came to Wenmai Road to collect the payment. Naturally, he was very arrogant. Miss Su, he suddenly called me from behind. He turned around and greeted him. He asked what you were doing. Ji said I was here to collect the payment for the book. He then asked if your novel was selling well. Now publishing a picture album. Busyness is so good that it's too late even if we print it overnight. Congratulations to you. He said it's not for the money, it's just to show some patriotism. Said seriously, I didn't want to listen anymore. I only remembered the time when he smiled at Qian Yingjun with his shoulder tilted. He had to quietly slip away alone. Either girlfriend can ask me to write for a women's magazine, but I need to change my pen name because this magazine is for women. Leader Miss Shi Hangwing started it. She didn't think much of my romanticism. She hoped I could change my pen name and write some serious articles. Let me tell you some inside stories about this magazine. She treated me like a confidant and said that this magazine was started by Miss Shi Hangwing, and there was another editor-in-chief, Miss Yu Hua. In fact, Miss Shi herself didn't care about anything. She just decided to hand it over to Miss Yu. Later, the first issue was published. There were 2 photos on it. One was Shi Hangwang's and the other was Yu Hua's own. Miss Yu Hua's photo was very charming. The 1:0-line copperplate was printed on the copperplate paper. It looked exactly like a photo. Someone asked her which company made the copperplate. Miss Yu was afraid that others would know and would also make beautiful photos. So she said she didn't know. This thing was also sent by someone else. I don't know which plate making company it was from. As for Miss Shi's photo, although the size is the same, it is only 80. It looks rough when printed on paper. There were too many. Plus, Miss Shi's face was not very pretty. She was chubby. She looked like a nanny. Some people said that Miss Yu's photo looked like a guide girl. Miss Yu didn't think so. Miss Shi was very unhappy. So when the second issue came out, she advocated not to cooperate. Miss Shi took the funds and continued to publish. The content must be serious. The editor-in-chief simply used a man, but gave him a more erotic name so that readers would think he was a woman. As for Miss Yu, she might publish a pictorial magazine with more of her beautiful figure. I was really not interested in what I heard, so I yawned. My girlfriend had to say goodbye. Before leaving, she asked me if I was willing to write articles for Miss Shi. I laughed and said that I couldn't write articles. If they also wanted to publish 1-2 line photos for me, I could give them a few. My girlfriend hated my helplessness and stopped talking. I continued my lonely life. One day I walked alone to buy a pound of sugar in the Blue Mountain Road. I suddenly ran into a certain literary writer who had borrowed money from Prime Minister Jin and later ran to the mainland. When I saw him, I called him Mr. So-and-so. He seemed to pretend not to hear me. But after all, because we were too close, he was embarrassed to turn around. He could only reluctantly answer, Miss Su. It's been a long time since we last met. I asked if you were very proud recently. He said, with a sad face, that we are writers. What is there to be proud of? Now I am the director of the interview department of the newspaper. People think that the treatment will be good, but they don't know that I can't even afford a tricycle when I go out. I smiled and said, don't worry. I didn't come to borrow money from you today. Hey, who said that Miss Su would borrow money from me? I was really forced by my friends recently. You also need to recommend someone. He also needs to recommend someone. Think about it. How can an interview department accommodate so many people? In fact, there is not much money per month, but their desires are not high. They just want to get the qualification. Cars and horses. I hope that the wait will not be in vain. I heard that there are many who have returned from studying abroad. As for university graduates, they are even more numerous. There are too many people and too few porridge. It is really hard to think about it. I smiled and said, I don't plan to ask you to find a job, Mr. Bo. I just came to greet you because we are old acquaintances. Where do you live now? He couldn't help but panic and said, me? I live in Grape. Forgot. Because I don't have my own house. I live under the eaves of my relatives. However, there are many people in their family, which is very inconvenient. I won't run to your house to find you. Please rest assured. Goodbye. At this time, he felt embarrassed and just asked me in a low voice, how are you doing recently? How is Miss Su doing recently? At least I have passed the TOEFL and haven't starved to death. Thank you, Mr. So-and-so. So I hurried back home again, and I didn't even have the heart to buy sugar. I know that people in the world are unreliable. I would rather be lonely and don't want to see other people's snobbish eyes anymore. I have lost my friendship with you. Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.